Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the India Foundation and the India Habitat Center, I welcome you all to the memorial lecture organized on the birth centenary of Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. This annual event is a tribute to the life and legacy of Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. His statesmanship, vision, and unwavering commitment to the nation continue to inspire generations. Today, we are privileged to host this gathering to honor his memory and reflect on his contributions to our nation. The program for this evening will be chaired by Sri Suresh Prabhu, who is the former Union Minister in the Government of India, and the memorial lecture to be delivered by His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, former President of Sri Lanka. Now, let us commence this evening's proceedings with a special tribute to Atalji, with a commemorative video capturing his enduring legacy and the highlights of our previous memorial lectures.
Probably one of the greatest orators that India has seen, a product of parliamentary democracy, a man who always measured his words, a man who had the capacity to place national interest higher than his own party interest, an excellent poet who used the facility of language that he possessed to pierce and penetrate every point that he wanted to make. His era spread through generations. What do I regard as his greatest achievement? Indian democracy, because of two political parties as national parties, became a viable parliamentary democracy.
As a statesman and a political stalwart, he dominated the national space for a very long period of time. As a Prime Minister, he kept the nation first. As an opposition leader, he was sharp but matured in his critique. As a Democrat, he was one of the few leaders who thought of every angle before taking a decision.
He fast-tracked development in various sectors, ranging from air connectivity, rail connectivity, port connectivity, even political connectivity also. And he was able to provide a able leadership and also a stable government.
Atalji was much more than a politician. He was essentially a sensitive and compassionate soul. So he naturally took to poetry to give expression to his anguish and pain.
सुशासन के जरिए समाज के हर वर्ग को सशक्त बनाना वाजपेयी जी का जीवन दर्शन था और जन सेवा के प्रति उनके आजीवन समर्पण का केंद्रीय बिंदु था।
टूटे हुए सपने की सुने कौन सिसकी, टूटे हुए सपने की सुने कौन सिसकी, अंतर को चीर व्यथा पलकों पर ठिठकी, हार नहीं मानूंगा रार नहीं ठानूंगा, काल के कपाल पर लिखता मिटाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ।
Indeed, a heartfelt tribute to the life and times of Atalji. May I now invite Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, President of the India Habitat Center, for her opening remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Honorable Shri Ram Madhav ji, Honorable Chief Guest for this evening, we are very honored to have with us also Suresh Prabhu ji, and we are deeply looking forward to the remarks by His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe ji, former President of Sri Lanka. I welcome you all on this rainy day to Stein Auditorium for this lecture, which is now at the 7th Atal Bihari Vajpayee lecture, commemorating what was his 100th birthday on Christmas Day, 25th December. It is not an exaggeration to state that Atalji was a towering figure in Indian politics, and as we've heard, a gifted poet. His tenure was marked by bold decisions, including the 1998 Pokhran II nuclear tests, which established India finally as a nuclear power. There were many, many achievements during his term, including the Golden Quadrilateral Highway Project, a proponent for peace, the Lahore Declaration to improve relations with Pakistan, etc. And he was also a person who thought deeply and spoke only when the occasion was required. But when he spoke, it was worth the wait because his words were like gold. He was awarded the Bharat Ratna in 2015. I have personally a long association with Atalji. I first met him in 1970 as a first-year student in Miranda House, Delhi University, when he had come to meet the students of Delhi University. We were all spellbound by his oratory. We just heard Arun Jaitley ji speak about him. We were all fellow students, and by his charismatic personality. Over the years, first in student politics and then in the foreign service, I established a personal relationship and rapport with him when he was leader of the opposition, and then when he was sent to Geneva by the government of the day to checkmate Pakistan on Kashmir in the then Human Rights Commission, now called the Human Rights Council, and later as PM when I was Joint Secretary Europe West, handling relations with the West after Pokhran, when India had, for the first time in her history, had to face sanctions imposed by the West. I also traveled extensively with him at the time, and I always admired the way in which he safeguarded our core national interests with a gesture, with a raised eyebrow, or occasionally by a sharp retort. Our honored guest and speaker today, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe ji, is a veteran Sri Lankan politician who served as the nation's president as well as prime minister. His political career spans decades, marked by efforts to stabilize Sri Lanka during a deep economic and political crisis. As prime minister and later president, he implemented significant economic reforms, infrastructural modernization, and foreign investments to rebuild Sri Lanka's economy. He played an extremely crucial role in post-Civil War reconciliation, advocating for national unity and reconstruction. He also strengthened Sri Lanka's international partnerships and secured vital economic support during challenging periods. Our chair today is Shri Suresh Prabhu ji, a former Union Minister and Chairman, Governing Council of the India Foundation. As a policymaker, he is known for his impactful leadership across several key ministries. As Power Minister, he led efforts to transition India towards renewable energy and modernize the electricity grid, laying the foundation for sustainable energy solutions. During his tenure as Railway Minister, he introduced significant reforms, including infrastructure upgrades, high-speed train initiatives, etc. Today we meet on this rainy and stormy day, one day after the passing away of another great Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who served as India's Prime Minister between 2004 and 2014. Before taking over as Prime Minister, he had been President of the India Habitat Center from 1997 to 2004. He was a distinguished economist. As Finance Minister, before becoming Prime Minister, he had introduced economic liberalization policies, steering India out of a financial crisis and transitioning the economy towards globalization and market reforms so that now we can talk about a Viksit Bharat that is soon to come, a developed India. During his tenure, he prioritized economic growth, social welfare, and global diplomacy. But he will be best remembered by many of us for the manner in which he steered through the India US nuclear deal, ensuring India's access to civilian nuclear energy. I had the honor of meeting Dr. Manmohan Singh many decades ago when he was a professor in Delhi School of Economics. He was the teacher and professor of my elder sister, who is herself an economist in Boston. And she always said that he was the most outstanding teacher as well as being an outstanding economist. Delhi School of Economics in those days was a beacon of hope for young Indians who wished, like my sister, to carve out their niche as economists. Most of his students, in fact, did so. He also had an outstanding memory. When I met him as Prime Minister on one of his visits to France, he immediately recognized me and asked me how my sister was. He was so well respected as an economist that one always wondered why the Nobel Prize in Economics was not conferred on him. I would like to conclude by stating that India had two great prime ministers whom we are remembering who have passed on. Let us remember them for their contribution to the motherland, to Bharat, that is India. I would like to conclude by citing Swami Vivekananda, who in the Chicago World Parliament of Religions in 1893 said, and I quote, "They alone live who live for others. We reap what we sow. We are the makers of our own fate. The wind is blowing. Those whose sails are unfurled catch it and go forward on their way. But those who have their sails furled do not catch the wind. Is that the fault of the wind? We make our own destiny." Unquote. I would now request the distinguished audience here to rise for a moment so that we can pay tribute to Dr. Manmohan Singh, former Prime Minister of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your remarks. May I now request the dignitaries to join us here on the dais? Shri Suresh Prabhuji to kindly escort His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe. Now, to set the tone for this evening, I invite Shri Suresh Prabhuji to share his remarks. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good evening, friends. Let me also express my own condolences to Dr. Manmohan Singh's family and also express a great appreciation of his contribution to our own country's economy, to our own country's polity, but not just that, but also to the rest of the world. So I just went to his house to pay my last respect, and I'm sure all of us will remember him for all times to come. I'm very happy that we have such a distinguished statesman like His Excellency Mr. Wickremesinghe has come here to deliver the 7th memorial lecture to honor the legacy of one of the greatest leaders that India produced, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And I'm very happy that he's also joined by his better half, his wife, and also welcome both of them to our own country, but also to India Foundation. I must thank my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Ram Madhav, for initiating this idea 8 years ago. When Atal Bihari Vajpayee passed away, almost everybody in the country, irrespective of the political affiliation, irrespective of the faith, irrespective of the age that they belong to, everybody mourned his death. People were really feeling that we have lost somebody from my family. And everybody wanted to know what is that we should do to commemorate and to perpetuate these outstanding leadership qualities that he showed during his long innings in politics. So Mr. Ram Madhav thought about this idea that we should have a memorial lecture. Not just a memorial, but a memorial lecture which will be delivered by someone who had known Atalji, who has shared his ideology, his philosophy towards the affairs of the state, and in the process, carrying out this lecture series would ensure that that thought process will continue. It is like the rivers which keeps flowing, then it keeps enriching. The people who are living around that riverbed, but also who are actually the one who love that particular river. So the same way the thoughts of Atalji are the ones which should keep flowing and should keep enriching the generations to come. It should guide them as to what should be done in the event of a crisis, and that's what this lecture series is all about. And extremely happy that someone as distinguished as the chief guest for the today, he's going to deliver his own thoughts on Atalji's leadership. We all know Atalji in many forms. And sometimes you wonder where was one person or many persons living in one body. He was a poet, he was a statesman, he was a very strong-willed person. And that's what 1998 Pokhran happened. Everybody, I was in his cabinet at that time. In fact, for me, it was like a not dream coming true, but like dream coming to earth. Because I had always watched Atalji from a long distance, maybe a few kilometers away. When he used to deliver his lecture, I used to go by public transport to listen to his speeches. And then I got opportunity to sit next to him. And then I learned what a personality he was. But not going into that. But Atalji was such a strong-willed person. A poet normally has a very soft heart, which he had. But he had that mind of steel when it came to matters of state. What mattered to him more was the national interest of his people, but not at the expense of others. He said, I must promote my national interest, but does not trample into others' interest at the same time. And that was his greatness. And that's why we still remember him at a time when the world is now really divided. A fragmentation is taking place in all parts of the world. The governments are changing, regimes are changing, and people are really wondering what it means for me, what is the future for me. And Atalji's thoughts will guide us in this event when we are facing such crisis. And I'm sure there is no one better than His Excellency Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe to talk about it, because he has been head of the state, head of the government many times. But recently, when he became president of Sri Lanka, he took over at a time when there was a crisis in Sri Lanka. In a way, existential crisis. People are wondering whether I will have a next day, what is that next day going to be for me? And he took office at a time to stabilize things. And he demitted office when Sri Lanka is in a far better shape than what it was when he took over office at that particular time. And we need that stabilizing force in the world today. We need a leadership which can actually ensure that we have to meet the aspirations of people. Regimes are changing, governments are changing because that's what people want. But it should happen in an orderly manner. There should be an alternative that should emerge at the same time. And that's what I'm sure he has demonstrated in his leadership. I still remember one thing when I was talking. Atal Vajpayee faced a no-confidence motion. And he lost that by 1 vote. He could actually got that because there was many others who were guiding him. Why one we can get 10 votes? But he said, no, I will not compromise on that. But I'm not saying on that count. I'm just illustrating this for a different reason. When he was facing that no-confidence motion, he asked the fragmented opposition, if tomorrow I lose the vote, I'll go away. But please tell me what is the alternative. who is going to be the leader after me? So he was always concerned about that alternative, which he said, for me, power is not important, the seat can come and go, but what alternative will create for the country should be better than what it is today. And that's what the world is looking for. Alternative is fine, change of government is fine, but what is that is going to be in store for us? I'm sure we'll hear, along with the thoughts on Atalji, how do we really drive this change now in future, wherein everybody wants change, but we don't know exactly what it means. And I'm sure we are very fortunate. I really thank you, Mr. President, for being here. And we are a real great friend of India. He has been actually, to say he's friend of India or he's friend of somebody is not right, because he's friend of everybody. He has been a personality which encompasses all opinions. He can take away all sections of society with him. And that's what Atalji was. Atalji was a leader of one party, never changed his party. But despite that, everybody in other parties would always say, Atalji is the person we respect, we like. Some opposition leader would say, you are a good person in the wrong party. But everybody said, you are a good person. And I'm sure the good person now we have on the dais will deliver his talk, his views on Atalji, also as to how we really drive the future, which will be good for all of us. Thank you very much. Once again, I welcome you on behalf of India Foundation. India Foundation does many programs. It is actually a program for intellectual pursuit, but also to promote national interest in a manner that we bring everybody together. How can you bring people around a table? How can you have dialogue? How can you express each other's opinions which may not agree with the other one, but also to ideas which can bring us to the next level? And therefore, Rami Desai, she's sitting here, she had curated a program called Ideas Conclave. So that is what we all believe in. Good ideas should be promoted, and that good ideas can come from anywhere, from any spectrum, which different parts of the country or different parts of the world. But we should try to promote them. So thank you, Mr. President. We really look forward to listening to you, but also working with you to make sure that our neighborhood, our subcontinent, our continent, Asia as a large, and whole world will become a much better place with the guidance, with the leadership qualities that you have demonstrated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words. It is now time for a special moment, the release of compendium on previous Atal Bihari Vajpayee Memorial Lectures commemorating the legacy of Atalji. May I now request Dr. Ram Madhav, President of India Foundation, and Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, President of India Habitat Center, to join us on the stage for this release. Thank you, dignitaries, for this memorable moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the proud privilege of inviting our esteemed speaker, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe, for the memorial address. Excellency, the stage is all yours.
Sri Suresh Prabhu, Shri Ram Mahadeva, Madam Mukherjee, distinguished guests, and friends. It's with great regret that I heard of the passing away of Dr. Manmohan Singh last night. So let me begin this speech then by expressing my condolences to the President, Prime Minister, members of Dr. Manmohan Singh's family, and the people of India. His first budget speech as Finance Minister in Mr. Narasingha Rao's government changed the course of Indian history. Without that budget speech, there would not have been any economic reform in India. And without those reforms, there would not have been a modern India. I was privileged to have associated with him during this period. On this occasion, I would like to convey the condolences of the people of Sri Lanka. You have conferred a great honor on me by inviting me to deliver the 7th Atal Bihari Vajpayee Memorial Lecture, a leader with whom I had an association spanning 4 decades. We must recall that 25th of December 2024 was also the centenary of his birth. Despite the age gap between us, our respective careers often intervened with one another. Over the years, both of us went through many ups and downs in politics. We both held positions as leaders of opposition in our respective legislatures. From 2001 to 2004, we were concurrent prime ministers of our two countries. A few years later, he retired from politics. I soldiered on, eventually to become the president of Sri Lanka, sadly, after his demise. My lecture today is founded on my vantage of India from across the Park Strait, its leaders and its contemporary political and economic relations with Sri Lanka, both as an observer and a contributor to the events of the last 50 years. My first visit to your country was as a young boy of 18 years to Chennai to sit for the London GC A-level examination, as was the prevailing practice in Sri Lanka at the time. I remember widely that the DMK had just won the Tamil Nadu state election and Anadure had just taken over. So this was my start of my interest in Indian politics. Though our historical linkages and networks can be traced back over 3 millennia, the modern histories of our two countries and nation states amount to less than 2 centuries. In fact, the modern political history of our interlinks can be seen to originate in a meeting between the Hindu monk and philosopher Swami Vivekananda and the Ceylonese Buddhist revivalist and writer Anagarika Dharmapala during the Chicago World Parliament of Religions in 1893. My own family's links with Indian political leaders go back 4 generations to the Indian self-rule leaders of Gopal Krishna Gokhale and the polymath and writer Rabindranath Tagore. My grandfather and other Sri Lankan leaders of the independence movement met Gokhale during their student days in the UK and often kept in contact with other leaders such as Gandhi and Pandit Nehru. Our leaders were aware that Ceylon could obtain independence from British only after the Indian Empire ceased to be. Hence, our leaders gave their fullest support to the Indian freedom movement, a call for Purna Swaraj. Thus, when India was established as an independent state in 1947, we followed suit as an independent Ceylon in 1948. The first Indian Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was admired by us and immensely respected for his leadership in giving birth to the Republic of India, Bharata, from a grouping of territories and princely states under the British Empire. Atal Bihari Vajpayee had an instinct understanding of this nation-building exercise and the need to maintain the unity of India's diverse people. His relationship with Pandit Nehru fascinated me, as it contained a high degree of respect for Nehru as a person, but a biting criticism of Nehruvian policies. His tribute to Nehru is an outstanding speech. Bharata Mata has lost a prince. The leader is gone. The followers remain. It is in the same vein as American poet Walt Whitman's tribute to Abraham Lincoln in the lines, "O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. But I with a mournful tread walk the deck. My Captain lies fallen cold and dead." My first meeting with Vajpayee took place in Colombo when he participated in the Interparliamentary Union Conference in 1974. I attended the meeting as an assistant to Sri Lanka's then leader of the opposition, J.R. Jayawardena. Later in the day, I came upon him at the Golf Face Hotel looking at the sea in deep contemplation, where I was able to have an extended conversation with him. Unfortunately, I lost contact with Vajpayee when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi made him a resident guest of the Indian government, leading to 2 years in the shade. However, in 1977 was an eventful year for both of us. In March, Vajpayee became Foreign Minister of India, and 4 months later, I became the Deputy Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, leading to a renewal of our acquaintances on many occasions from then on. I have always also been an eyewitness to the pivotal and sweeping economic metamorphosis of India from the late 1990s onwards. As you may recall, Sri Lanka was a forerunner in instituting an open economy in South Asia as far back as 1977. Sri Lanka, by 1989, as Minister of Industries, I had brought in the second generation of economic reforms in the country, which included Sri Lanka's strategy for industrialization. Not long after, in 1991, India's first generation of economic reforms were introduced by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, whom I had known from the early 1980s, since he was my counterpart in India when I was the Minister of Education. When you have been in politics as long as I have, you end up knowing everyone at some point or other. To me, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao was the Telugu version of the Italian political strategist Machiavelli, because I don't think he ever anticipated that he would become the Prime Minister of India. However, when he did so quite accidentally, he took the opportunity to implement his reforms by utilizing a number of cunning ploys and unscrupulous gambits. It was unfortunate then, when his lack of support base in the party brought him down, that the reform process stagnated. Prime Minister Vajpayee, on the other hand, dauntlessly managed to initiate the second generation economic reforms in India in 1999. It was ironical that Acharya Kriplani had once called Vajpayee ji a Nehruian in the Janasangh garb. Nevertheless, 3.5 decades later, Vajpayee ji in BJP garb took the final steps of dismantling what was left of the Nehruian economy. His second generation reforms were bold, which included, amongst others, capital market liberalization, privatization, and the opening of the telecom industry. As a result, within a decade, these two prime ministers have paved the way for a promising, vibrant, new Indian economy. We considered Vajpayee ji to be a close friend of Sri Lanka. In the dark days of Indo-Lanka relations, 1983 to 1987, President Jayawardena always insisted that a High Commissioner in New Delhi, kept Vajpayee ji, was in opposition at that time, update on the ongoing discussions between Sri Lanka and the Indian government. When I became Prime Minister for the second time in December 2001, Sri Lanka was facing a severe political crisis. The Sri Lankan armed forces had to fall back under LTT attack and abandon many areas that were under their control. With the attacks on the main port and airport, vessels and aircraft stopped calling on Sri Lanka, leading to the economy shutting down. Thus, we had no option but to enter into a ceasefire agreement with the LTT. On becoming Prime Minister, I immediately flew to New Delhi and explained the situation to PM Vajpayee, who also agreed on the need for a ceasefire. Moreover, Sri Lanka required the support of India to deter further attacks by the LTT and to get the peace talks on track. I always kept Vajpayee ji informed of the progression of our discussion with Norway, Japan and the LTT, the conglomerate of friendly nations that spearheaded the peace process. At the very early stages, he told me, Wickremesinghe, this is also a very sensitive issue in India. I can only be one step ahead of Sonia Gandhi. You explain it to her and convince her, then I can follow up. Fortunately, the Sonia Gandhi was partial to resolving the crisis in Sri Lanka and said that long as India's concerns are met, she had no objections. There were other ways in which we improved Indo-Lanka relations. For instance, whenever I met Vajpayee ji, I always conferred on him 2 large boxes of Sri Lanka's best handmade chocolates which he loved, though I believe that he was not given access to sweets. Once he presented me the translation of his poetry, among other gifts. Our meeting on the 25th of December 2001, his birthday, laid the groundwork for closer relationship between our two countries. In fact, Vajpayee went out of his way to help Sri Lanka. He did so by ensuring 1. India reiterated its commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Sri Lanka, and 2. Its support of the measures taken to carry forward the peace process in Sri Lanka. As a result of these discussions, I was able to sign a ceasefire agreement with the LTT in January 2002. At the time, there was an imminent food shortage in Sri Lanka, and India promised to provide us with 25,000 tons of wheat per month for 12 months. Vajpayee and I also discussed 2 other delicate matters. Referring back to the discussions between President Jayawardene and Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in the 1980s, I too emphasized that the security of our country should not be compromised in our dealings with one another and with the rest of the world. We also deliberated on developing the abandoned oil field of oil tanks in Trincomalee, built during World War II. Subsequently, on my way home, when asked for a comment by the Indian media, I replied, "Christmas has come." 2002 and 2003 were crucial years for Indo-Lanka relations. We both agreed that there was a need to strengthen bilateral relations on the other front as well, especially the economic, since we were at the tail end of the conflict with the LTT, or so we thought. Vajpayee left the details to Brijesh Mishra, his man for all seasons. My government covered new areas, especially trade, economics and investments. All successive governments on both sides used the same format to carry on the discussions. Mishra was against terrorism and gave us all possible support, though this was kept under the radar. By 2003, the situation had turned to the advantage of Sri Lanka, strategically, economically and internationally. Prabhakaran knew that he could not gain the upper hand in peace negotiations. Therefore, at this crucial point, India, supported by us, insisted on a response from the LTT to the proposals made by Sri Lanka government and the early resumption of negotiations. From then onwards, India supported us until the defeat of the LTT in 2009. One topic that Vajpayee ji and I discussed during our opposition days was the need to go beyond the free trade agreement between India and Sri Lanka and to promote close economic cooperation between the two countries. In government, we were able to implement the task by prioritizing the fields of agriculture, power and the IT industry. Thus, once the ceasefire agreement came into place, our focus turned to the economy, and these two, Vajpayee and I, were on the same page. For the first time, both governments were committed to liberalizing their economies further. An agreement was reached to set up a task force for the FTA and beyond, which should encompass the service sector. When we had our next bilateral meeting in October 2003, the FTA had become a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. We had decided to commence negotiations and conclude discussions by 2004. But by that time, both of us were out of office. Nevertheless, the two nations went on to promote Indian tourism in Sri Lanka, increasing Sri Lankan Airlines flights and increasing the daily services by Indian Airlines. The two of us took Indo-Lanka relations to a new level by firstly allowing Indian oil to enter the Sri Lankan market and utilizing the oil tanks in Trincomalee for storage, and secondly by agreeing to establish a coal power plant in Trincomalee. In response to the need to strengthen Indo-Sri Lanka connectivity, we agreed to commission a feasibility study on a land bridge between the southernmost tip of India and the topmost point of Sri Lanka, in order to grant Tamil Nadu with land access to Colombo and Trincomalee ports. The ultimate aim of this project was to make Sri Lanka a regional logistic hub. In 2015, when I became Prime Minister again, my peer in India was Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I had visited Gujarat some years ago when he was Chief Minister. I remember a visit to Lothal, to the ruins of the old Harappan port, which he kindly facilitated. During the dialogue with PM Modi in September 2015, I referred to his Independence Day speech when he called for the cooperation of SAARC to fight poverty. I briefed the Prime Minister on the progress that we had made with Prime Minister Vajpayee. I also emphasized the need for more balanced trade relations since Sri Lanka's trade deficit with India was nearly $4 billion at the time. Prime Minister Modi in fact told me, I intend to go much further than any of my predecessors and put a real economic agreement in place. The result of our negotiations was visible when I visited India again in 2017. By that time, we had accelerated talks on economic and technology comprehensive agreement in place of the earlier comprehensive partnership agreement, as the negotiation economic cooperation had regressed considerably prior to 2015, as the preceding government has second thoughts on the matter. In 2017, the two governments also entered into an MOU on cooperation in economic projects under the agenda for bilateral economic cooperation. These projects embraced an LNG terminal, floating storage regasification unit in western province of Sri Lanka with a pipe gas distribution unit, and an agriculture sector and livestock development. The high point of our economic cooperation was a group of projects to develop the Colombo and Trincomalee ports to make Sri Lanka regional logistic hub. These ambitious plans included the upper tank farm in Trincomalee to be developed jointly by Lanka OIC and our Petroleum Corporation, a solar power plant in Trincomalee, special economic zones in Trincomalee and other identified locations, a container port terminal in Colombo, the development of the Dambulla-Trincomalee Expressway linking the two ports, as well as the Mannar-Trincomalee Highway, thereby enhancing our connectivity with India. To me, this was the most formidable project in Sri Lanka after the Mahaveri Development Scheme, which delivered hydroelectricity nationally and over 200,000 acres of agriculture in the dry zone of our country. The MOU was the first significant achievement between our two countries. Until then, there was no sustained arrangements on economic cooperation. Whenever such cooperation was attempted, some of the trade unions and political parties in Sri Lanka opposed it. Even in this instance, trade unions came out on strike against the Trincomalee tank farm proposal. Some of the political parties also called for its abolition. In fact, when Gotabaya Rajapaksa became president in 2019, these same trade unions who supported President Rajapaksa demanded the cancellation of the tank farm deal. However, the calamity of COVID-19 and the consequential economic crisis in Sri Lanka showed India at its best at the most crucial moment when Sri Lanka declared bankruptcy and had only a few $100 million in reserve. India valiantly stepped up to help us. The Sri Lankan people could not have survived without the $4 billion of financing received from India through various credit lines. It was India's neighborhood first policy in practice that benefited Sri Lanka. India was followed by Bangladesh with a loan of $200 million. Furthermore, India as co-chair of the Official Creditors Committee gave us valuable help. All these vindicated my stand on closer economic cooperation with India, including improved connectivity in key sectors. By then it was clear to most in Sri Lanka that recovery from bankruptcy and fast growth could be achieved only through closer economic cooperation with India. In July 2023, Prime Minister Modi and I announced the Promoting Connectivity, Catalyzing Prosperity, India-Sri Lanka Partnership Vision. This impressive vision document covered 5 main subjects: maritime connectivity and air connectivity, expanding the scope of our earlier agreements; trade, economic and financial connectivity, going beyond ECTA, for example, operationalizing UPI-based digital payments; C, Yet the most important item was the energy and power connectivity, where India agreed to assist Sri Lanka to achieve the target of generating 70% of our power requirements from renewable energy sources. This involved the construction of a multi-product petroleum pipeline from South India to Sri Lanka. These projects would result in Sri Lanka being fully connected to the Indian energy system with the ability to bring in and sell energy. The people-to-people connectivity aspect of the joint statement included education and a feasibility study on the land bridge between India and Sri Lanka. A part of Sri Lanka's media had been critical of this agreement, saying that we had given too much to India. But a welcome development with the support of the SLPP, President Mahinda Rajapaksa's party, who was by this time a part of the government. The next important development is the joint statement of 16 December 2024, issued after talks between President Anura Kumar Dissanayake and Prime Minister Modi, fostering partnerships for a shared future. With this, it seems like the remaining major political party in Sri Lanka, the NPP, has come on board. At long last, a political consensus emerged amongst us on Indo-Lanka cooperation. The two Indo-Lanka partnership visions established the framework for a bilateral economic partnership based on connectivity, a follow-up to the IMF stabilization program. The 2024 statement is explicit on the aim of moving Sri Lanka away from a debt-driven economic model. For 2 decades, Sri Lanka's economy has relied heavily on excessive debts, culminating in bankruptcy and economic meltdown. Therefore, the strategy in this statement is to enhance Sri Lanka's economic development by coupling our economic recovery to India's sustained and shift economic growth and technological advancement. It is expected that by 2040, India would be the third largest economic power in the world. By then, Tamil Nadu's GDP would have exceeded $1 trillion. This is the powerhouse to which Sri Lanka has to connect as a region. All this will establish larger markets for Sri Lankan exports and create 2 new economic sectors which are expected to be fast growing. One, energy connectivity. Establish grid interconnectivity, thereby enabling Sri Lanka's potential for surplus renewable energy to be engaged in trading with India and Bangladesh. 2, maritime and air connectivity. In addition to India as a global economic power, Indonesia will also be among the top 10 in time to come, with Bangladesh following closely behind. This will lead to an explosion of trade in the Bay of Bengal area. As noted before, if Sri Lanka positions itself as a regional logistic hub, we can become a beneficiary of these developments in the region. Thus, the two governments must finalize the outstanding issues of strategy within a short time frame and agree on the modalities to implement these proposals. Today, it is only fitting that we witness the conclusion of talks on economic cooperation between our two countries on Vajpayee's birth centenary. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for sharing your anecdotes and the illuminating address. To express our gratitude, may I now request Shri Suresh Prabhuji to felicitate His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe. Next, I request Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee to felicitate Professor Maitreyi Wickremesinghe, who is an academician, author, and a renowned literary figure, also wife of Ranil Wickremesinghe, as a mark of our appreciation for her gracious presence here. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw this evening to a close, may I now invite Major General Dhruv Katoch to deliver the vote of thanks.
Namaskar. Today is a day we will long remember. A day when we pay tribute to two of India's illustrious prime ministers, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who left us in August 2018, and Dr. Manmohan Singh, who sadly passed away yesterday. This occasion also marks the annual Atal Bihari Vajpayee Memorial Lecture, held in honor of Shri Vajpayee's enduring legacy. This year, as mentioned earlier, is also the centenary year of Shri Vajpayee. Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was truly one of India's greatest statesmen. His visionary leadership charted a course for the nation's future, laying the strong foundation for its remarkable growth story. As we conclude the 7th edition of this memorial lecture, it is an opportune moment to reflect on his profound contributions to our nation and his exemplary life. We were indeed very privileged to have His Excellency Shri Ranil Wickremesinghe ji, former President of Sri Lanka, with us today, who delivered this year's inspiring memorial address. Your words, Excellency, highlighted the many facets of Vajpayee ji's life and legacy and offered valuable insights into the enduring partnership between India and Sri Lanka, which you have so ably taken forward. We are deeply grateful for your presence, and we are also deeply grateful for the presence of Professor Maitri Wickremesinghe ji, who have joined us for this occasion. Thank you, Excellency, and thank you, Madam, for being here with us. I also extend heartfelt thanks to Shri Suresh Prabhu, former Cabinet Minister and Chairman of the India Foundation Governing Council, for his gracious presence and insightful remarks. Your unwavering support, sir, and guidance have been instrumental in shaping India Foundation journey to its current stature. We also thank the India Habitat Center and its President, Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee, for providing the perfect venue for this solemn occasion. This partnership has allowed us to host this event with the dignity and elegance it deserves. To this wonderful audience, your presence here, despite the inclement weather, is a testament to your respect and admiration for Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. Thank you for joining us in honoring this great leader, statesman, and poet. Finally, I express my profound thanks and appreciation to Shri Ram Madhav, President of the India Foundation, whose vision and leadership has made this event possible. My thanks also to Diksha and her team, who have worked tirelessly over the past few days to ensure the success of this memorial lecture. Your dedication is commendable. Once again, thank you all for being here. Together, let us carry forward the legacy of Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.